The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
Hello, I hope you're doing really well. It's Mark Kelly here, co-founder and chief customer officer at Alldus International, and I'm very happy to welcome you to the ServiceNow podcast, part of our Alldus podcast. And today, I'm very happy to welcome Jelane Johnson. Jelane is a VP, a UHC transformation at UnitedHealthcare. Great to have you on the show today.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
For those that don't know yourself, you came from the consulting background before you got into work at UHC. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey now and how you got into the world of ServiceNow?
I spent quite a number of years working for Accenture as a consultant, management consulting, organizational design, system implementation, focused a lot in various public health practices, working with different states and Medicaid claim systems and eligibility systems and things like that. And again, not just the IT aspect of it. A lot of it is around business process analysis and redesign and organizational design and management consulting. And that background and the variety of disciplines that you're able to learn and exercise in a consulting environment across a number of different clients, that has just really translated to how I think about any given piece of work. And I've been at United Health Group company for 8 years now. I started on the Optum side and now I work for the UHC side, but it's all under the United Health Group umbrella. And the background in systems thinking and enterprise level kind of analysis and understanding is what I bring to everything that I do for the company, and especially what we're doing with ServiceNow.
For people living in the US, they're going to be aware of Optum UHC, but people in Europe, they may not be. Could you tell us a little about some of your objectives within your role? And within that, maybe give us an overview about the type of reach that you have and the complexity at Optum UHC and operations.
UnitedHealthcare, of course, is a large healthcare company, and we serve a variety of clients across corporate and individual and providers. And the work that I do is really focused on some of the internal mechanisms. So we are a very large enterprise, and different areas of focus, whether it's consumer or provider or anything like that, everybody's focused on our external customers and service to those people and those institutions. And the internal stuff requires as much thought to make sure that we are being thoughtful about the enterprise tool sets we leverage internally and how we share data internally so that we can not be operating in a silo and we can have the visibility across all of the different, say, product areas or work efforts that are going on via a comprehensive internal enterprise tool set. And I mean, there's so much that goes on. What I focus on is a very specific set of activities within operations, driving to enterprise alignment across a variety of different matrix groups. So if you think of them as communities of practice across the enterprise, and it can be disciplines as varied as reporting and analytics, or workforce planning and management, or vendor management, or project management, product analysis, automation, back-end systems, those kind of things. Every single one of those disciplines in our enterprise, we have teams sitting across the enterprise doing similar work, similar vendor management, similar automation, things like that. And they want to make sure that across the enterprise, we're in alignment with each other so that every automation team doesn't necessarily need to go out and buy a completely different automation tool set. And the project managers across the enterprise, they want to have all of the project information in a central repository so that each team can put in what they're doing, pull out what they need, but they still have an enterprise level visibility via that roll up. And so these matrix communities work together to establish the standards so that they can do what they need to do for the product areas that they serve without having to reinvent the wheel across every single team.
And that's so important, not reinventing the wheel, because if we think about the world that we're living, a lot of us are working from home. It's so easy to go and do something that's already been done, get a tool and start implementing that's going to impact everything else. And that communication and being really thoughtful about how things are coming together, you've been really proactive around that. Maybe you can share some of the ways that you've been able to have communications, transparency, and making sure that you're not worshiping one tool, but you're really being very careful about and thoughtful about how you're utilizing it.
Again, there are a variety of different communities of discipline that we work with and support. Project management is a good example. There are multiple teams. We knew that some of these teams had smaller development groups. They were custom building different applications to track their project and program information. Other teams were using SharePoint. It is just, again, everybody's operating with the best of possible intent, but again, duplicating effort and being thoughtful in the outreach across those communities. With ServiceNow as an implementation, the project management community of practice, the leads for that in partnership with my team went team by team to all of the different project management groups and not only said, thou shalt absolutely use this central tool. We worked with them to see what additional information was needed that we could put fields in and capture what additional reporting formats did they create for their group that we could capture and automate within ServiceNow. And then once we had their needs met in the tool, worked very carefully to onboard them, to do the import of the data that they had. And again, just went team by team to achieve that. In another group, the reporting and analytics group, they use Swift Kanban for managing all of their work, planning their sprints. And we knew that we did not want to disrupt that because that's not the way we're using ServiceNow. Again, we never wanted to make it a one tool overall. So working with that community of practice, we established a front door intake through ServiceNow to let us capture the requests flowing in so that we can do comprehensive reporting, and then established interfaces that push the requests into Swift Kanban, created the cards so that the people who are actually using Swift Kanban to plan their work, plan their sprints out, they can continue using that tool. And once they complete a request, that information flows back into ServiceNow so that, again, there's one place for people to see the information, but we haven't made everybody switch to a single tool. It's been a very thoughtful approach to integration and onboarding.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
Tell us about how you've been able to use tools like Yammer to ensure visibility, collaboration, prioritization, and how do you kind of get people engaging on it?
I know it sounds like this overamp thing, but we've established a methodology for each of the communities of practice. So there's a lead for each community. That lead in partnership with us works to reach out across their matrixed community to put together a steering committee of people who represent the different teams who are part of that community, and they prioritize with that group. So it's not one person saying to everybody else, thou shalt. It really is a community-based prioritization with a thoughtful governance structure. And we use Yammer. It's our internal enterprise social networking tool, if you will. And in partnership with my team, we establish Yammer channels for each of these communities so that they can, publicize to the world that they exist, what they're doing, where key information is stored, when they have trainings for the community coming out, when they have documents where those things are published. And anybody can come into any Yammer channel and ask questions. And in that way, they're not, one of the things that's easy to do is say, okay, everybody who's invited in, I'm going to communicate with you. But again, we're a very large and growing enterprise. And sometimes you just don't know everybody to invite to the party. And so Yammer is a way to make yourself visible and make the work you're doing very transparent and accessible for people who maybe don't know that they should be part of the community. And they can see, oh, this exists and I want to join. And then you can use it that way. So it's a Yammer channel for each of those communities. And again, it's their priorities, what they want to do, how they want to, do I want to focus on standards for my community? Do we want to establish a common tool set for my community? Do we need to roll out a common set of learning paths to make sure that everybody's skilled up the same way in this community? The steering committee working with the community lead set those priorities, and then we use Yammer to make sure everybody possible has access to ask questions and understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant because you've created such an exhaustive list. And by getting all the different stakeholders involved, you're thinking about any possible blind spots that could be there or something could be left out. And nobody wants to seem foolish. So having those opportunities for those little points to reach out, find out about, clarify, and making that very accessible because it is so transparent is so important. And I think it's a great example about how communication, if done exhaustively well and engaging so many different users, can be comprehensive for people just to row in behind it because you've got such complexity you need to deal with. Like 13 different matrix communities, close to 600 matrix members by 13 times. It is overwhelming to think about all the different possible narratives that could happen. And then you're getting that source of the truth out there for people to look at. You've been listening to the Alldus podcast, and today we have our ServiceNow series, and I've had the absolute pleasure of being speaking to Jelane Johnson, VP of UHC Transformation, UnitedHealthcare, and we talk about a little bit of background and from making the move from consulting in Accenture into Optum and into UHC and operations, talking about objectives and managing through complexity at Optum UHC operations, and also the importance of communication and taking into consideration different stakeholders' opinions and what's important across the business and not reinventing the wheel. I do have one question for you that is going to go to our next guest, and that question is any question you would like regarding around ServiceNow that our next guest will answer on the fly. And what is your question for today, Jelane?
Probably you can guess from my take on my work is, what is your vision or your strategy for integrating ServiceNow into large enterprise environments? Given the number of different tool sets that serve such distinct functions, it's not realistic to have one tool overall that's going to do everything. How do you think about the opportunities for integration to share data and integrated workflows from within ServiceNow to other tools? And what other tools do you really see that happening with a lot in industry?
That's a fantastic question. I just jotted it down there as well. As you said, I can't wait to actually ask that question. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.